Okay. All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. This is the first of our series where we're going to be talking about different technologies, give quick overviews, and then maybe talk about interesting projects going on at clients or whatever makes sense. We're just hoping to have a regular monthly um, session, and it will ideally count for CPE for those who need hours, and otherwise just keep people up to date on what's going on. So this first one here is talking about Power Query and Power Pivot. These are not new technologies. They've been around forever. Well, not forever, but like 10 or 15 years. They're extremely powerful, and I don't think that I know that not everyone uses them to their fullest capability, and myself included. There's a ton of power behind these tools, lots to learn, and so I thought what I would do is just present some of the functionality that I'm aware of, and the idea here is this is not training. This is an overview, just showing you some of the functionality, and if it's either something you think is useful or if you're otherwise interested in it, you can get more information either from me or from all the different tools that are out there. Yeah, so I don't pretend to be an expert. You guys may even have more knowledge about these tools, but I figure it's a starting point and maybe a review. Okay, so let me switch to the agenda here. I kind of talked about the purpose there. We'll talk about what Power Query is, what Power Pivot is, data models, measures. We'll do some demos, and then questions at the end. So one of the things I wanted to ask, so this is a small group. Please, even though we're recording, feel free to ask any questions or correct me. So do any of you have experience using Power Query, Power Pivot, data models that'll help me tailor this as we go along? I don't hear anything, so it sounds like maybe no.
No, for me.
Okay.
I'd say minimal for me. Used it.
Sorry, I didn't hear that, John.
I've used it a little bit, but not too much.
Okay.
Power queries.
Okay. And Jennifer, I know you were spending some time working on you're learning this stuff. So
I am, yes.
Okay. Good. All right. So starting off, what is Power Query? So everybody has used a. Oh no, I'm just gonna. Let me back up. So Power Query, what is it? It's a tool for automating the pull of information from different files into Excel. So that means you could pull it from a PDF or a CSV file, another Excel workbook. You can manage the data that's in that file and bring it into the format that you want it to be in Excel. Another term for this is extract, transform, and load, or ETL, which is a common. Once you start getting into database tools, you'll hear that term a lot. And that's all it is. It's just pulling data in, manipulating the data into a form that you need in Excel. And this is a repeatable process. So once you set up your query for a file, you can repeat that. So let's say it's a trial balance. Your client sends you a trial balance, and every month they update it, so you have a new month of data. So rather than having to bring all that data in every month and figure out, oh yeah, I forgot I have to split this field and I have to transform this into a currency data format, you press a button and it will essentially remember what you did last time, and you've automated that process of importing. I mentioned ETL. That is extremely complex once you start getting into SQL, and how the coding and everything is you have to know how to code in SQL and the other different languages. But with this, you just really have to be comfortable with Excel, and there's a lot of similar functionality that you can just build on. You can build on your Excel knowledge to start doing this. This is, I think of this as the back end to Power BI. We're not going to talk much about Power BI, but Power BI is a presentation of data, and Power BI uses these tools to display the data in the format that you want it to be, whether that's a dashboard or Excel or yeah, I guess those are the two types. Okay, I think I talked about this example. So key features of Power Query: you can take data from multiple sources, from multiple data files, and merge it into one table. So you might have a budget table and an actuals table and a forecast table. And that's actually the example we're going to walk through. Maybe they're in different ones in an Excel file, one's in a PDF. You can combine that into one table to build your analysis. When you're bringing that in, a lot of times the data is not clean, or maybe it is just it's a snapshot. They've taken a report. Your client has taken a report out of their ERP, and they just send it over, and maybe it's in a PDF or it is in Excel, but there's a lot of manipulation that has to happen. So yeah, the reason that I want to talk about this is that last bullet point there. I think there's a lot of opportunities. If you're not seeing this used, my guess is your clients there's probably an opportunity where they could use this to automate a lot of what they're doing when they're manipulating data. Okay, so I'll stop there. Any questions on anything we've talked about or I've talked about so far? Okay. Okay, so what is Power Pivot? It's a data modeling tool. It is a more sophisticated pivot table. And what that means is that there is a data model behind your pivot table. So the data model establishes where the data is coming from. So you could pull from multiple tables and combine it into one pivot table. DAX DAX is a language where you can get very complicated and sophisticated with the data manipulation that you do. You can create fields that are way more powerful, way more way more powerful than just normal fields that you have available to you in a pivot table. It's better for large data sets. It's much more efficient when it pulls the data. And this is also part of the back end of Power BI. Okay, so I mentioned we'll talk about the data model being the back end of the pivot table. VLOOKUPs, while they're very useful, they are once you need to refresh your pivot table or update it, if you add columns, you can easily break it, and the integrity of the formula is suspect. I think it has its use, but it's not as powerful as the similar functionality that you can get from Power Pivot. Okay, this is the example the demo that I'll show later of combining actuals, budgets, and forecasts into one model from separate files. You can build. It's much easier to build a year-to-date or periodic views of the data. So let's say you want to do a year-to-date analysis compared to budget, but then maybe you want to do a trailing 12-month budget analysis. That in Excel, if just using a straight pivot table would be very cumbersome and prone to error, just because you're managing formulas and VLOOKUPs, and you can simplify that a lot with Power Pivot. Okay, it's great for multi-entity, multi-department, multi-year analyses. So anywhere where you're doing financial reporting, it's very, very valuable. Slicers, these are sort of like drop downs, but much more powerful and user friendly. So we'll talk a little bit about those too. Okay, so this is kind of diving right into some functionality, but I thought I would highlight this here. So a measure is a pivot table field that you create that is portable. So I struggled when I was walking through this, trying to explain it here, but maybe this example is probably the best way to explain why this is more valuable. If you've ever been in a pivot table and you've created or even a data field, and you've created a custom column, for example, column G. So what I have in the upper left-hand corner there is a made-up sample data for a bicycling retailer. So they sell bicycles throughout the United States. The column D there, the unit price. So a bicycle costs $450. The price of that is $450. The cost $244. The margin for that is then 46%. So it's just the margin divided by the unit cost. So 46% is useful on its own if you're just looking at this one row. But once you start combining, so in the right-hand corner there, I've got an example. So this calculated field, what it is it's a sum of all of the margin percents. So it's a meaningless number. This 1,353% is meaningless. All it is the sum of column G up here. Really what I want to know is, okay, what is the margin for, in this example, the Northeast? So it does calculate, because this is a field that is created that is independent of the level of, it is dependent on the level of summarization. So it is calculating the total of the unit costs and the total of the price, and then calculating the margin, as opposed to just summing up the margins. Okay, so that's kind of a tricky concept. I'll stop there in case this is, if I can answer any questions or try to explain that better. And I'll show how this is created here in a minute. But so is that making sense to everybody? Why this is an advantage to use a measure over a calculated field?
Yes. Show us. Is that not simply a formula in your Excel file?
No, it's yes and no. So the middle column there, the calculated field, is just that's all this is column G. The cell formula is the margin divided by the cost. Actually, I think I might have done over price, but yeah, margin over price. The problem with using that is, as you see in the pivot table of that, if I do any summarization of these rows in the pivot table, it's just adding up those percentages. So,
right, but you could achieve the same result potentially in this particular instance by taking the average.
No, because they will do the same thing. It will just sum up the average for each.
Oh, okay.
And it's something you kind of have to play around with to really, or for me, I had to really play with it to understand what the difference is. But it is an important concept. But it's incredibly powerful. I was going to say something else there, but I forgot. Okay, so I will move on unless I can further explain that. Okay, so I'm going to walk through a couple different, or a few different scenarios here that shows the ETL process, or bringing in information into Excel. And I think this is probably, if you walk away from anything from this presentation, that's probably what's going to be the most useful, or at least right now. It is automating the process of bringing a file into Excel. We'll talk about, I'm not going to do a demo on this, but I can explain better how this will work if for a monthly update, for example, for a client's P&L. I'll also show how, for a trial balance, let's say you have a client and they are they have their own chart of accounts. They present for their internal management presentation, but then their parent has a separate chart of accounts. So they need to show that same information rolling up to their parents' chart of accounts. And then measures versus custom field, I'll walk through that too. Okay, so I'm going to switch over to Excel. Can you see Excel on your screen now?
Yes.
Okay, so nothing special about this Excel instance. I'm going to go to the Data tab here, and I'm going to, over on the left here, you'll see Get Data. So I click on Get Data from File, and I'm identifying an Excel workbook. Okay, so I have this file here called PBC. So this is a situation where an imaginary client called Barksdale has asked me to create a budget to actual and forecast analysis for them, and they're going to want me to update it every month. So I'm going to bring that in. Oh, actually, let me show you what the file looks like first. Okay, so this is what they sent me. It's just a report that was spit out of NetSuite or whatever accounting system they have, and the data is pretty clean just on first glance here. There are some problems though that prevent me from really being able to use this as the capabilities that I have are limited in what I can do in Excel because of the way that the data is formatted. It looks like a pivot table, but it's a snapshot of results. This is another concept that I kind of struggled with, but the months are column headers. But in Excel is going to see that, and it's going to think, okay, I have a data field called April, and I have a data field called May, when really you wanted a data field that's called amount. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that, but hopefully that makes sense. But I can come back to that later, and it might make more sense. But I do need to create this so that I have transformed this data into a field that can be read into a pivot table so that I can further massage and manipulate the data to present it how I want it to be presented. A couple other problems with the data. This isn't really a problem, but I would like to be able to map their chart of accounts into the parent company's chart of accounts. So I'm going to want to split this column into account number and then account description so that I can link that to their chart of accounts. So that's something I'll want to look at. And if you look, you can see this is kind of a garbage row here. Gross profit, that's actually that's a subtotal. So it's calculating revenue minus COGS and coming up with this number. I'm not going to want that in my data set because it's a hard-coded subtotal. So I'll want to get rid of that. Same with net income. Okay, so that's my data set, and you can see here that I've got tabs for each type. So I've got a budget tab, and I've got a forecast tab, and actuals. I'm going to close this file. All right, so starting from scratch here, I'm going to want to pull in that data. Pulling from Excel. Okay, so I identify my file that I want to bring in. This is the file that they sent me. Okay. So what I have here, this is the ETL screen. So this is going to be a function that is saved with my workbook, and it's going to define data that is being brought into my Excel workbook. So I'm going to identify, let's say, budget. I'll start with this budget tab, and what you see there is it's looking into the Excel file and it's saying this is what I see. So what I could do is I could just load it and it would pull that same information in, or I can go to this tab on the lower right corner that says transform data. Taking a minute. Okay, so this is another view of what Power Query is seeing when it looks at that file. So this is still not very useful. It's got the header. It's got the meaningless column headers that are column 2, column 3 instead of, you can see down on row 4. These are the column headers that I actually want to be as column headers. On the right here, you see the query settings, properties. That's this is the name of the table that it's looking at. And then applied steps. So every step here, there's only 4 rows right now. These are different actions that are being performed on the data. And every time I manipulate the data here within this, what looks like an Excel grid, it is going to capture that or record that information. Okay, so I've got a little script here going. Hopefully I can toggle between these two so that I don't waste a bunch of time. Okay, so first thing I want to do is, I talked about this earlier about how the columns are showing up as months. The data is rolling up to data type January, which doesn't make any sense. I want there to be one column for the data and in a column called amount. So what I'm going to do is make sure that's actually the row or the order I want to go in. Pivot months. Okay, so I'm going to highlight the different months here. And I'm going to click transform. Now, up to the up in the middle of the screen there, just off to the left, you'll see I'm about to hit unpivot columns. So you'll notice you're seeing months on row 4. Actually, I don't know if I've gone in the right order. Let me try this and hopefully this works. Yeah, that did not work. Okay, well, this is another good way to show this. So on the right there, it did create that step, unpivoted columns, but I realized, okay, that's not what I wanted, so I just delete it. I think what I'm going to do first is I'm going to get rid of these columns, or these first rows that I don't need. Where did it go? Oops. Your screen is not frozen. I'm looking for the oh, for crying out loud. There we go. Okay, I was on the wrong tab. All right, so I want to get rid of these first 3 rows here. So I'm going to say remove rows, remove the top rows. I'm going to remove the first 3. Okay, it's looking better. So now I've got rid of all those rows, but now my column headers are still not columns. It's just a row. So what I do is use first row as headers. That's at the top there, right in the center. You use first rows. Now watch what happens when I click that. You'll see that what's currently on row 1 will become the column headers. Okay, so now I have account number. That makes sense. January going across here, that's getting closer to what I want, but I still don't want January as my data header or February, etc. So I'm going to highlight those rows. And now I'm going to hit unpivot. So that's also center top screen just off to the left there. I hit unpivot. Now watch what happens. It's going to change from having a row for, or sorry, a column for each month. And now I have this column called attribute. So it unpivoted that table. And so now I have one column with the data values. And that's this value here. I'm going to rename that to amount. I'm going to rename attribute to, let's call this 3-character month. Okay. All right. So does that, I'll pause there. Does that make sense? What I've been, or what's happened up to this point?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So now a couple things. This 3-character month field that's all it is. It's just text. That's not a date. I can't do anything with that in Excel other than just treat it as a text field. So actually, let me make sure I'm going in the right order in my script here. Okay, I'm going to do some things first. So the amount here, this is coming through as just a general field. I want that to be a currency field so that I can, so that it will recognize that as currency and not create a bunch of problems when I bring it into my pivot table. So all I do here to fix that is in the upper left corner data type, I'm going to change that to, where's currency? Currency. Okay, so now that will, if you've ever struggled with the data types in Excel, that will prevent a lot of problems right there. Okay, going through my script. Okay, now what I want to do is I want to address this problem that I was talking about earlier, how this is not really a date field. This is just 3 characters. So what I can do is I can create a column here that will turn that into a date. So upper left corner, rather than, I'm going to hit custom column. And I've got the formula here. So let me just copy and paste that. I mean, we could spend time talking about that, but really just for the purposes of the demo, I'm just going to copy and paste this in here and you can see what it's doing. Okay, switch over. There we go. Okay, I'm going to call this new column date, put this formula in. It's going to transform that 3-character into an actual date field that is the last day of that month for 2025. And I click OK. Oh, brilliant. Okay, well, that's not working. Let's see if I can quickly address that. I may have to move past it. Oh, that's why. 3-charm month. Okay, so you can see there it transformed into a date. So from January, it now is January 31st. I can get rid of this month here, but before I do that, I notice that there are errors because it's trying to convert this subtotal into a date, and that's obviously not what I want. So I'm just going to get rid of anything that says total. I'm going to get rid of it. So I just uncheck that box, and that's gone. Okay, and there's no red at the top, so now I know that my data has been properly formatted. I don't need this 3-char month anymore, so I'm going to delete that. Move. I'm going to convert the date into a date data type. Okay, let's see what else. Okay, this is also a very useful function. So what I can do, so I mentioned earlier, I've got this account number and I've got it as a combined field. So I've got the account number and the account description, and I'd like to separate those. So Power Query is smart enough to know that I'm going to create a column from an example. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start typing. I'm going to say this column should be the value 410000. And it's going to guess, it's going to say, okay, so you want the whole value from account number. Well, that's not what I want. I only want the first 6 characters. So I hit enter. And it's smart enough to know that based on what I entered, this is the value that needs to be populated for each row. So I took the account 410020 and it populated there. So for every row, it's pulling from the first 6 characters. Okay, so I want that to be a field. All right, and then I want to do the same for the description. Column from example. Start typing revenue, product sales. Hit enter. Still doesn't know quite what I'm looking for, so I'm going to try typing that again. Okay, now it knows because I entered it twice, and it populates the entire table with the description after the account number. Okay, so then now I've got these 2 new columns. I don't need this old account number, so I remove it. I'm going to call this num. Call this account description. Okay, so now when you look on the right and you see the applied steps, you can see there's a step now for everything that I just did. And if I wanted to change any of those steps, I can just go in and edit, or I can delete any of these steps if it doesn't make sense anymore. So it's really easy to use once you get the hang of it. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to close this and it's going to pull it into Excel. Actually, let me make sure there's something else I wanted to do here. Yeah, okay. There's other things I could do. So like it's pulling in revenue as a debit amount. I could pull that in as a credit so that it functions as a trial balance and makes sense from an accounting standpoint. But I'm going to skip that for now. So I click the X in the upper right corner, and yes, I want to keep the changes. Okay, so what it pulled back now is it is an Excel table, and it has all that information. So it went from what's that other file? Okay, so what I have on the screen here is 2 different views. So you've got the original view with the yellow highlighting. So it had the months across, it had a combined account number and account description. And with this view, after manipulating the data, it has transformed it into a table that Excel now knows how to present in a pivot table format. Okay, so does that make sense, or any questions? Again, I'm not trying to teach you how to do this at this point. It's really conceptually what is the power behind Power Query and how this can be valuable for automating an import process. Okay, so then I'm going to close this, and I've already you'll notice, I just pulled in the budget information here into the table, but there, you may remember there were 3 different tabs for budget, actuals, and forecast in the file that was provided by the client. So I imported those into a, where are we here? I can't see. I've got the. All right, let me try this way. Okay. So what I did is I have already loaded those different tabs into this the same format, so Excel can pull this information into a combined field. So on the right here, that queries and connections, these are different imports from that same file. So the top one there, actuals, is pulling in the actual information, budget, and forecast. So it's pulled into these different worksheets. So you've got the forecast, budget, actuals on separate tabs. And then what I was able to do is take those 3 and put them into one master table. So now I have, when I click this P&L type, you can see that there's actuals, budget, and forecast. So all that information is there, and I can create a view of the all that information as actuals compared to budget and forecast. Clearly, this is not ultimately how I would want this presentation to be, but just to give you a sense of how this transformed from being 3 different worksheets that are static and not something that I can work with, to now I have it in a trial balance format, and I can create a budget to actual report on this. Okay, so making sense so far? It seems quiet, so I'll assume that everyone's kind of getting where this, what this is all about. Okay, so the next concept that I want to talk about is the data model. So that is a concept within Power Pivot itself. I have added these different tables to the data model, and I access that by hitting the manage on the upper left-hand corner here. So what I'm showing, this is all stored within the within that same Excel workbook that I've been working with. Lower left-hand corner, you can see the different tables. So this is a different view of the table that is in the Excel worksheet. So I've got actuals, budget, forecast. And then I have also something that I haven't really talked about yet, but this is the chart of accounts. So I've got an account number, account description, and then I've got 2 different roll-ups for each account. One is for Barksdale, which is the subsidiary, and then I have another column here for the parent company. So this will enable me to do a presentation for both internal Barksdale purposes and then for the parent as well. Okay, another thing I want to show is the diagram view. If you're familiar with Access, this will look familiar to you. This is the relationship between the different tables. So what I'm going to focus on is this combined table, because this has actuals, forecasts, and budget all in one table, and then it's linked to the chart of accounts, or the COA table, and it's joined at the account number. So that allows me within my pivot table, I can then present the data based on the different chart of accounts view that I want to look at. Okay, so I'm going to close that out. So what I've got here, what I'm presenting here is this is the same pivot table, but I pulled in the different chart of accounts line item for these two different tabs. So I've got a P&L Barksdale. You'll notice on row 10, it's revenue, and P&L parent, it's broken. It's a different presentation. So that chart of accounts has certain accounts mapped as gross revenue rather than revenue. And this is all just from being able to have one chart of accounts. I'm managing the chart of accounts within the data model, which then allows me within the same pivot to give different presentations. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is, unless there are any questions, I was going to move on to measures. I'll pause for a moment. Okay, so this is a tricky concept, measures versus calculated fields. I'll try to explain this as best I can. What I would recommend is, if this does seem like something that is useful, it really just takes practice, and there's training you can take that I'm sure can explain it in much better and in much more detail than I can, but I'll try to give the overview of why this is valuable and what's important about it. So I have created a measure here. I'm going to manage measures. So it's a calculation based on the different data fields within the data set. Oops. I'm actually going to access it through the data model. Okay, where's my measure? Oh, wrong file. Okay, so I'm going to switch over to, this is another fake company. This is the data table. So this is where I calculated the unit price by, or sorry, the margin by line item. So this makes sense. This is just a simple margin divided by price. So it's margin per unit. And when I put that into my pivot, just look at the margin percent right now. So the way that the pivot table works is it's going to sum up all of the information. What I've selected here, the Northwest. So it's going to add up all of those margin percents rather than saying what is the margin per unit price for the Northwest. So this is a meaningless number. All it is a sum of the different percents. Then if you look over in column F, the margin percent now makes sense because it is looking at, it's calculating based on the totals here rather than the sum of the individual line items. I'm pausing there because I just want to make sure that people have an opportunity to ask questions about that if that doesn't make sense. Okay, so what I can do is I created that measure, and now it's available when I create a pivot table. So if I scroll down, scroll, you'll see this thing with the function X at the bottom here. That indicates that this is a measure, and I can use that that field no matter what view I'm looking at within the pivot table. And I can also, let me pull in product here. So I'm going to pull in product, and I'll unselect Northwest. Okay, so for each region now, it is calculating that margin percent. It updated, still getting a garbage number for the sum of the margin percent, but it updates for each individual type of sales or type of item that's being sold. So it's 35%, 45%. And then if I click on Northeast, it's going to show the total there of 44%. Okay, I'm not going to go into how to create a measure unless that unless we have time to do that. Let's see, how are we doing on time here? No, we're not gonna have time to do it. The other thing I wanted to show is what are called splicers. And this is similar to a drop-down in this example, because this is a very simple example. So if I wanted to look at just the Northeast, I can click on this. Or if I want to look at Northeast and Southeast, I control click, and now I can see two of these versions. The advantage of this slicer is it's more user-friendly. If you send this out to someone who maybe is not familiar with pivot tables, this is much more intuitive than clicking the drop down. But really what the benefit is you can get much more complex, because this slicer is based on the data model as well. So you could have an option here for Northeast bicycle components. So then just by clicking a button, you can see that view. I mean, that's kind of a nonsensical example, but you can get very complex with the different presentations and the different options that you have available to people. And this comes in handy, especially if you're taking this up to a Power BI presentation. This is often used in Power BI. Okay. So let me go back to my deck here. I think I covered everything I wanted to. Yeah, okay, so those are the different scenarios. What I would suggest, if you do think this would be useful, there's plenty of information out there on Udemy, edX, those types of courses. You can take another hour presentation, or you can take Power BI that are like 40 hours. So they're very good training, very good next step, because they will show you how to actually use and develop your own implementations of Power Query and Power BI, etc. And if you want, what I would recommend is, if you have a file that you have to bring in every month or something, and if you want to just practice, just take that file and try bringing it into Excel, try transforming the data so that it meets your presentation needs. That's the best way to get started. And then the third thing here is think about how maybe if you have clients and they spend a lot of time or importing data and manually massaging the data, this is a great way to automate and make pretty significant difference if you're automating that process for them. So I would suggest, if it's not something you're interested in doing, let me know, or someone else who has familiarity with how to do this. And I think we'd be happy to help automate any of these processes. Okay, so questions and wrap up. Again, I'll pause for as long as we need if there are any questions. Okay, if you are looking for CPE, Aaron can issue a certificate. This definitely counts for Washington. I don't know about the other states, but you may look into that, and it might count for you as well. But Washington is pretty liberal with what they accept as CPE, but we do meet all of the qualifications for Washington. As part of this series, John's going to be teaching another session on July 24th. And so this, rather than technology, he's going to rather than a session on implementing technology, he's going to talk about the CHIPS Act project that he's working on at Global Foundries, which should be fascinating. It is a fascinating subject, and it's a really interesting client too. So I'm looking forward to that. We're looking for ideas for future sessions. The one we're thinking of after John's, so that would be in August, is AI. Everybody's talking about AI. It kind of gets repetitive, but I think it's incredibly powerful. If you're not already using it, you should be using it multiple times a day. A lot of this deck that I just created for this was AI generated. I'm curious to hear how you're observing our clients, how they're using it, how you personally are using it. So it's going to be more of at least how I'm thinking about it now. It will be sort of more of a roundtable than me or somebody presenting AI, because I'm certainly not an expert, but I would love to hear how you see it being used. Cryptocurrency, with Coinbase being a key client, we've got a lot of people who have in-depth knowledge of crypto, and I think it'd be good to hear about that. So I'm looking for anyone who might be interested in presenting that. Tariffs, did I spell that wrong? I think I did. There we go. Tariffs, Pillar 2, those are going to have an impact on our clients. We had a session on Pillar 2 from Palesa, but I think even within the past 3 months, that's probably all changing. So tariffs in Pillar 2, I think, would be an interesting subject. And please let us know if there's a technology or general subject, anything you want us to present for one of these monthly sessions. Okay. Well, let's see. We have time here. One last thing. A lot of this, what I talked about, you may be asking yourself if you're thinking, well, I can do all that with a VLOOKUP. It's true. A lot of this could be done with VLOOKUP, but Power Query is way more efficient. I've got some reasons here. If you're curious, I'll send out this deck, and you and I can either talk about it. We can talk individually, or I can explain why I think that Power Query is more powerful and more reliable than VLOOKUP. Okay,
Steve,
well, I'm happy to. We've got a few minutes here. If anybody has any questions, I'll hang on till the end here. But if not, thank you all for attending. Love your feedback, whether this was useful at all. I know this gets really complicated really fast, but hopefully it gives you a sense of why I think this is powerful and why it might be useful.
Paige has a question.
Yes, Paige.
So a lot of our clients use Google instead of Microsoft. Have you asked ChatGPT or otherwise done any search to see if there's a companion function available in the Google stack?
No, I haven't. I would imagine that. I'll just do a quick one here. Is there a Power Query in Google Suite? Or no, Google Sheets.
Mm-hmm.
Seems to be the same response for all Google Sheets compared to Excel questions. Yes, it does exist, but not as powerful. Okay, so yeah, sounds like there is an opportunity there, especially for the relatively basic application that I just showed. I would imagine this is could probably get you there, although this is a lot of it seems like it's a lot more manual. So you can import, but it doesn't allow for that transformation. You can transform, but you're using a lot of formulas to do it. So it looks like yes, but not nearly as sophisticated as Power Query.
Thank you.
But Python, you could get crazy with Python, and it's probably way more powerful than Power Query.
Hey, Steve, I've got a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, so at Global Foundries, one of the things that they're starting to do is they're forecasting their cash flows for their grants. So let's say they've got about 100 grants. That's not the right number, but approximately. And they're forecasting cash flows out, let's say 10 years. And then they also are tracking actual cash flows. And then the forecast they update every 3 months. So they have quarterly forecasts. They want to make sure they maintain all the historical forecast data. So essentially they've got, it just increases the size of the file continually, and it's messy and it's ugly, and they're really just starting this process. And I think what you were describing, could they just have a discrete file for each separate forecast and then in more of an automated way, pull that data via Power Query to update the reporting?
Oh, for sure. That sounds exactly like the
Yeah, because your example, I think
use case.
yeah, it was right on point with what they're looking to do. But
Yeah.
yeah, the way they started doing it was, 20 columns turns into 40, turns into 60. Like, don't use columns, use rows. But then, 20 becomes 40. It still gets to be a monster, but at least if you have different rows rather than columns, it's readable. But
Yep.
yeah, using this just makes a lot more sense, especially all the calculations and doing the measures. I think that would be beneficial for them. But so I'll probably have to re-listen to this, but I want to try to give it a shot. And then I might circle back with you, maybe have a working session with you, me, and maybe Nicole Green.
Yeah, sounds like the ideal use case for this. And I love this stuff too, so I would be happy to help out.
All right, you'll be our data monkey.
That's right.
All right.
I will have copy this recording and the deck on both the Camber Teams channel and our new YouTube channel. So I will send out links as well as everybody's CPE certificates and the invitation to the next session.
All right.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, everybody.
All right.
Cool. Gosh, that was a yeah. I think I should have